Let's talk about the high-low game. The high-low game is a guessing game in which the player tries to guess a hidden number, which we'll call the target value. After each guess, the player is told if the guess is too high or too low. The goal is to find the target value in the fewest number of guesses. If we have a computer program to play the high-low game, the interaction might look something like this. The program tells you it's chosen a number in the range 1 to 100 and prompts you for your first guess. Let's say you enter the number 50. The program immediately tells you that the guess is too high and re-prompts you for the next guess. When you enter 30, it might say it's too low. This continues until you narrow in on the correct target value. The program reports how many guesses you used and thanks you for playing. Let's develop a program that plays the high-low game. Okay, I've brought up Thonny, in which we'll develop our high-low game. I've called the file high_low.py, and let's start by creating some variables. I know I need a target. I know that target needs to be random, so I'll call one of the random functions. Let's call randint, which includes the endpoints, and I want a number between 1 and 100. If I'm going to call a random, I need to import random up here. So now I have a randomly chosen target value in the range we're looking for. I also need the user's guess. So that's going to come from prompting the user for input. So guess what it is the prompt. And that will prompt the user, read in the value, and store it in guess. Now, that stores that value as a string, and we know target is an integer, so to compare them, I'm going to convert the input string to an integer, so now they're both integers and I can compare them as needed. So we know the program is going to loop multiple times as long as the user hasn't yet guessed the target. So I don't know exactly how many times we're going to need to go through the loop, therefore it's probably best done as a while loop. While loops are better for situations where you're not sure how many times you need to go through the loop. And what's the issue? I want to keep doing it as long as the guess is not equal to the target value that was randomly chosen. So it's in this loop that we will give the feedback on the high-low issue, get the new user's guess. So we're going to develop this in stages. So let's actually just copy this line and put it into the while loop. And that will be where we're guessing, repeatedly getting a new guess as long as the user's guess is not correct. I'm going to go ahead and put some of the scaffolding output. I've chosen a number between 1 and 100 is printed at the beginning of the program. Okay, that's not working because of the apostrophe in I've, so I need to use double quotes to define this string. Usually I use single quotes. Unless I need to in a case like this, I'll use double quotes, although it doesn't matter either way. After the entire program is run, we print thanks for playing. So those are kind of the anchor points. All the hard work is done in between, and this helps me kind of know where I am in the program. And I'm going to go ahead and run it as it stands right now before I worry about all the feedback on the high and low issue. Let's see where we stand here. Now, here's the trouble with programs that include randomness. It makes it sometimes difficult to test. So I'm going to set an explicit target value. Instead of doing that, I'll comment that out for now. Instead of getting the random value, I'm going to set an explicit target value just for testing purposes. So now let me see where we stand as it is before I worry about the next stage of this. So here it is in the prompt in the console window. This is my initial prompt, guessing what it is. I know that the answer is actually 42, so I'll guess something that's not 42. So that printed that first, so I'll have to flip that around, obviously. But the first guess, which was wrong, got me into the loop. So now this is the prompt that's inside the loop. So I'll guess a wrong number again, and it keeps me in the loop because I'm still not guessing the right number. So as long as I guess incorrect numbers, I stay in there, and then eventually if I guess the correct number, it kicks me out and concludes the program. So at least I can kind of move forward with the confidence that the general loop condition seems to be working properly. I know I need to move this print up above the initial guess. And what else could I do here? I'm a little bit bothered by the kind of duplicated effort here where I'm prompting and reading the first guess versus prompting and reading all the others. Whenever you have duplicate code, you might want to consider that there might be a better way to handle the situation. In this case, perhaps a better way is to simply initialize the guess variable to something that will deliberately get me into the loop the first time, and then let this one line prompt and read the guess each time. So this value could be anything outside of the normal target range, which is 1 to 100. So it could be -1, 0, how about -999, something like that. Maybe I'll even put in a comment here and say that the initial value is out of range, which will force me into the loop the first time, and then everything happens inside that loop. All right, and I could run and test this again, but let's go ahead and move forward to the feedback of the too high or too low. So I know that I need to ask the question, if the guess is less than the target, then that means that the guess was too low. And so what do we want to do here? Is this a simple if-else? Probably not. The indentation is not quite right here. Let's see what we got wrong. We want 4 spaces everywhere. So there we go. There's not just 2 conditions, there's actually 3, right? It could be too high, could be too low, or it could be the correct value. So I'm going to have an elif at this stage and ask another question. Is the guess larger than the target? In which case the guess was too high. And then an else, because the only possibility, if it's not too low or too high, it must be the right answer. So what's our feedback when we have that correct? That's it. They got it right. Oh, right. We also want to give feedback about how many guesses they needed to get it done. So we'll have some variable, let's call it count, to keep track of the number of guesses. All right. Let's think this through again. As long as we haven't guessed it yet, we keep getting a guess. We give them the feedback of either too high or too low. When eventually they get it right, this will print out. This will therefore be false and will fall out and be done. So the only thing missing, I believe, is setting up that count variable. We'll initialize count to 0, and what? After every guess, we'll increment count by 1. I think we may be very close to having a complete high-low program at this point. I'm going to leave the fixed target for the moment for testing purposes. Let's go ahead and run that and see where we stand. We know the number is 42, so let's again guess a wrong number. And this time that first prompt was from within the loop, so that's working, and 55 is, in fact, we know too high, so that's correct. If I go 88, that's too high. If I go low, 22, that's too low. So it looks like the too low and too high feedback seems to be working, and then eventually I give it the correct answer. It says I did it in 6 guesses. Let's double check that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That count seems to be right. So let's run it again. Again, we know it's 42. Actually, testing this again with it being 42 isn't that interesting. Let's go ahead now and modify the program so that instead of the hard-coded 42 value, we go back to our randomly chosen target. And now we're playing the game the way it's actually intended to be run. So let's see what happens now. 50 in this case is too low, so let's guess higher. Still too low. 85, too low. This is a high number. 90, 95, 95. Got it in 5 guesses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That seems to be good. Let's test it again. 50 is too high this time, so it's a lower number. That's good. Too high. 15. And I got it in 3. Just happened to get lucky there. And the feedback was correct. The count is correct. I'm starting to feel like we have a pretty good solution here. Let's do it a few more times. It's too high. 25 is too high. 15 is too high. 10 is too low, so it's somewhere in between. Too high, it must be 11, right? There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So in a real situation, you'd want to run this quite a few times, especially with the randomness in play, and really raise your confidence that it seems to be working. But I think overall we've got a good solution here. We could add documentation in, some appropriate comments, make sure all our code is as clean as we want it to be. But I think in general we have a good solution to our high-low game.